Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu met with leading members of Congress Thursday and discussed proposals addressing Gaza while the ceasefire between Israel and Hamas holds. The Times of Israel reported Netanyahu's office said bipartisan Senate leadership expressed, quote, unqualified support for the Prime Minister and Israel, along with the current ceasefire. This morning at the United States Capitol, House Speaker Mike Johnson and Mr. Netanyahu spoke to the press.
I was deeply moved by the reception that we got, the substantive things that we discussed, making sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, and also making sure that Hamas is destroyed. We're not going to have a future for Gaza or for a future for peace in our part of the world if Hamas remains there.
During the Senate photo op on Thursday, the Prime Minister was questioned about whether United States troops would be needed in Gaza, and he answered a resounding, and I quote, no. Joining us now is the former United States Ambassador to Israel and author of the new book, One Jewish State, David Friedman. Ambassador, welcome back to Victory News, sir.
Thanks, Greg. Great to be with you again.
All right. Reports this morning say Hamas is deliberately delaying the submission of the list of hostages that should be released on Saturday. Reports are this is Hamas's retaliation for Israel delaying humanitarian goods from entering Gaza. Yet, as you can see on the screen right now, thousands of trucks have brought aid to the area. So what do you think is actually going on here?
Well, I just saw a news clip about a minute or two ago that they have delivered the list. I hope that that's accurate. But, the big picture is that this is Hamas. I mean, this is one of the most ruthless, barbaric, immoral terrorist organizations in the world. And they will continue for as long as they have any role in this process to inflict as much suffering, if it's not physical, certainly psychological and emotional, on Israel and upon these hostages. You saw how they delivered the last round of hostages, where these poor women were surrounded by people with machine guns, wearing masks. They were petrified. They didn't know whether they were being freed or they were being executed. So this is a horrible organization. The quicker they can be eradicated from the face of the earth, the quicker, the better the world will be.
Okay, the ambassador, the Jerusalem Post is reporting today that Hamas is concerned about young Gazans immigrating away and drying up the nucleus of a people for Hamas. This comes following United States President Donald Trump's announcement of his plan to relocate residents out of the Gaza Strip. Is Trump reshaping diplomacy with the Gaza discussion there?
Oh, he sure is. I mean, I think what he has suggested is bold and creative in so many ways. Look, to the extent that the militants leave, obviously that, Hamas loses its military force. To the extent that non-militants leave, Hamas loses its most strategic weapon, right, which are the human shields, the women and children that Hamas hides behind that makes it harder for them, to be dealt with. At the end of the day, the only way that this conflict ends, both the physical conflict and the psychological energy that Hamas brings to the world, is for Hamas to be resoundingly defeated. And the way you'll know that Hamas is defeated is the way President Trump suggested, which is they lose their land. When they are taken off the land, okay, there'll be no doubt who won and who lost. And it's only through that victory that we can cycle of violence.
All right, let's talk about your book, One Jewish State. You say that Hamas's October 7th terrorist attack provided a moment of, quote, great clarity that we must try something new. But then this comment is what caught my eye. It is this clarity that compels us to go back to the basics, to return to the biblical values and divine covenants that unite the Jewish people. Would you explain that for us?
Sure. Well, October 7th convinces us that there can never be a two-state solution, right? Gaza effectively a Palestinian state. That didn't work. So we need to find another solution. Now, you look around at other solutions. Israel is the only country in the region that has the ability to empower its Arab minority, to bring peace and security and human dignity and prosperity to all its inhabitants, including Palestinians. Now, in Judea and Samaria, the biblical heartland of the Jewish people, the heartland of the Christian faith, right? There's no one other than Israel that can make that land peaceful and can preserve all the holy sites. And so, the book argues for sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, and I think the point is, why should any of us be surprised that God's will, God's covenant to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, fulfilling that covenant is what brings the best outcome for all the inhabitants of this region.
You mentioned Judea and Samaria. Last year, you said Israel should apply sovereignty over Judea and Samaria in a way that compares to Puerto Rico. What do you mean by that? We're under a minute here.
Sure. Well, look, we need to do two things. We need to provide human dignity, human rights to all inhabitants of Israel, okay, including Arabs, Palestinians, Christians, everyone. At the same time, we need to preserve Israel's quality as a Jewish state, which means that we can't have another 2.5 million Palestinians coming in and voting in a national election. Puerto Rico is a good model because in Puerto Rico, you have an American territory. American is the sovereign over Puerto Rico, but the people don't vote in national elections. And I think it's a good example for the solution here.
Interesting. Thank you, Ambassador.